mEducation Alliance. And I'm thrilled that we have this first session to kick off our Alliance Day presentations for the day, and as part of a 4-day series of discussions around ed tech in low resource context. The Alliance Day is really special for us. For those, Bob and Mike, that have been in many Alliance Day events, we typically started with a coffee, then we did a dinner, then we did a half day, then we did a day for Alliance members to come together and share their experiences with each other, right? Bob, Mike, remember those?
We missed those days.
And then we thought what's nice to take advantage of this virtual environment is to be able to share the opportunity for professional development and networking among a broader network of folks. So actually one advantage of this virtual space is that we could have more folks that are able to participate from Alliance member institutions. I'm also thrilled that another one of our panelists who's joined us today is Jane Meyers. And Jane, we thought it really exciting to have you join us as well, in addition to Bob and Mike representing Alliance member institutions, as one of the organizations that's been a beneficiary of the Alliance, but also a contributor because the experiences with Labuto Library. And Jane, if I'm not mistaken, I believe you've attended every single Alliance event over the last 11 years. Is that right?
I think I've attempted to. I believe one year I was in Zambia and couldn't do it, and it wasn't virtual yet, but not that would have been the only thing that kept me away.
Okay, well, that's terrific to have you join us. And so again, for those that are unfamiliar with the Alliance that may be joining us today, it was established when I was at USAID, but then quickly the idea of which was to have a professional development network among other Alliance member institutions. And if I believe we had that first year when we did our event in 2011, 7 Alliance members, and to date we're over 43. So just to let you know, that space of institutions that have been looking at this topic of education technology for development. Thank you. And so this is a list of Alliance member institutions. It's a little bit small, but you'll see throughout the 4 days, we have this theme of superheroes. And for those that will be joining us tomorrow for the opening of the public-facing symposium event, we'll be elaborating on that. But, want to congratulate my colleagues. It was a particularly challenging year for everyone because of COVID, but those institutions that have been investing and looking at the space of ed tech for many years, I think rose to the challenge to try to help share their experiences with other institutions. So I want to thank our Alliance member institutions for their engagement. I would say as we go along in terms of the Alliance Professional Development Day, feel free to use the chat to jump in if you have comments or questions of our colleagues as well. And again, just to turn it over to, I wanted to start with, maybe I'll just do a quick introduction. Oh, one thing I will mention is that we, just like the Alliance members, we see it as a number of institutions that are collaborating together. By and large, the mEducation Alliance is about education ecosystem strengthening, particularly those institutions that are investing in ed tech in developing country context. For those that are joining our public-facing forum symposium event, we've organized it around the themes of Math, Power, and Literacy League. And those are actually 2 initiatives that we started this last year, specifically to help strengthen that ecosystems of particularly those organizations directly working in the numeracy and literacy space. We'll be elaborating on that more over the 3 days of the public-facing event, but just wanted to underscore it in terms of the ecosystem building. Those of you who are joining us today, please let us know if there's particular activities that the Alliance could help facilitate or catalyze that you're working on. And we hope that the Alliance Day discussions today will elicit some additional opportunities for networking. So let's go to the last slide. And finally, oh, sorry, the one before, Nicole, so apologize. The one before this is that we will say that we're really excited that the symposium has grown every year in terms of its participation. I believe we had 12 countries when we first started. We now have 38 plus countries participating, 145 presenters, a variety of organizations from around the world. And then, okay, Jane, you're -1, but I believe Carmen Streigel attended all 11 symposia as well. So you're close to it as well. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over. We're just going to have a little bit of conversation. That's part of the benefit of the Alliance membership is dialogue among counterparts in other agencies. And I've mentioned a few of my colleagues, but I'll do the little formal introduction is Jane Meyers is the founder and president of Labuto Libraries. Welcome, Jane. Thanks for joining us. Michael Hollaender is the head of section of education for vocational education and training at GIZ. Thanks, Michael, joining us from Germany. Pretty exciting times in Germany over the last 24 hours, Michael.
Oh, you can tell so.
And
maybe a little bit too exciting.
Too exciting. So yeah. And then Bob Hawkins, senior education technology specialist at the World Bank. Thanks for joining, Bob, this morning. So maybe just to start with, after this, we have the networking session, so we have a few minutes just to have a conversation with each other. I'm going to start with, let's start with Bob. Bob, this last year must have been really interesting for you at the World Bank. Anything particular that you want to share about your role at the World Bank, or how to condense this in terms of a short vignette? Any particular reflection about the last year that you'd like to share?
No, it's been an intense year. I think the fact that COVID has compelled countries around the world to think about remote hybrid learning and the role of ed tech has resulted in a large demand for the type of issues that we've been talking about for the past 11 years. And having kind of this network of colleagues in place was extremely beneficial to be able to kind of reach out to colleagues, even between these symposium, to kind of share what they're doing, to kind of understand what demands they're getting, and to be able to collaborate. And I think this is key to this past year is being able to not just work as one institution, but be able to reach out both as an institutional level, but I think more importantly as an individual level, to kind of know the people in the network that are working on these issues, and to have conversations around kind of what are you doing in such and such country, what are you thinking about this issue, and it's been extremely beneficial to kind of have this network to be able to respond to this crisis and the demands that we've been facing over the last year.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Maybe to pick up, Jane, I'm going to go over to you just to add about, the importance of the work that you're doing at Labuto Library, maybe just to give a short little vignette about Labuto Library itself, and how important it is having institutions like Labuto Library that are part of the mEducation Alliance network that really holds sort of the truth of what's going on at the ground level. Maybe just a vignette or a reflection, Jane, that you want to share about the last year?
Well, just to introduce it, I do want to say our name isn't Labuto Libraries, it's Labuto Library Partners, very, very specifically, because what we are doing, we are librarians, we are establishing public libraries starting in Zambia as a model for library services, public library services for children and youth. And partnership is central to that. And the Alliance partnership is essential to the Alliance as well. And so I think we can't leave that out in terms of thinking about our relationship. I like the way you introduced us as both a beneficiary and a contributor to the Alliance, because I think that has been the essence of our participation. Like any good library anywhere, we serve young people and help both educate them and self-actualize them, help we approach them holistically. And of course, technology is a very, very important part of what we make accessible to young people. But the importance about that relative to the mEducation Alliance is that it's just a part, and that coming to the Alliance every year is like going to library conferences and seeing what is the latest this and that. And I love just keeping up to date with who is doing what, where, and what is out there that we might be able to partner with and bring to our libraries in Zambia and show other libraries what they can do with technology, with ed tech.
Great, thanks, Jane. And I know that you and your colleagues will be presenting at the symposium as well, as you've done every year. So we're thrilled to have you join us as well. Michael, any reflections that you have? First of all, maybe vis-a-vis your role at GIZ, but any reflections you'd like to offer about the ed tech or what attracted you to the Alliance in the first place?
Hi, Tony. Hi, colleagues. I'm head of section education and vocational education and training, TVET, back in the headquarters in GIZ in Germany. And in our team, we provide the technical backstopping and the expertise for program development and further development of our programs. We continuously advise our programs on technical issues and so on and so forth. And there also comes in the EdTech sphere. And I remember 2012 when we got first, or when we approached the Alliance the first time, it was 2012. I felt like, how do you say in English, a lone voice in the wilderness. Yeah, we had a lot of colleagues in the education sector who say, well, Michael, fair enough, ICT for education, that's how we called it that time. Fair enough, interesting, funny, but there are other problems there. And now, only a few years later, see where we are. Yeah, in GIZ we apply the so-called digital by default approach. Whenever we program a new, or if we design a new program, we are committed to properly check how the application of EdTech can improve our programs, the effectiveness and the efficiency. And from a lone voice in the wilderness became a constant issue. And Bob already mentioned it. COVID-19 became a real booster for EdTech in education. And to be honest, we were not prepared for this booster and for this huge demand. And that's why I see the relevance for the Alliance as I have seen it back in 2012 when we first entered.
Thanks, Michael. Every time you mention Lone Wolf, Michael, I can't help but think of you and your colleagues dressing up for Halloween. I don't, just for one symposium that we had around Halloween as well. So sorry that image comes to mind as well, but I really appreciate your reflection as well. So it's interesting, if you guys remember, we had one of our symposium, I think it was in 2017, that the premise was looking forward. And then we wanted people to give presentations as if it was 2020. And then as if their projects were successful, what were the success factors? I don't know if you guys remember that. So whatever the theme was, and we had like sunglasses, we all wore sunglasses about seeing forward, seeing the future and the like. But a lot has happened in the 10 or 11 years since the Alliance first kicked off in 2010 with its first symposium in 2011. I'm just curious what kind of reflections you have for your own purchase from where you are within your institutions. What have you seen as the change of education technology in that 11-year span? Just any sort of reflections or from your own context in terms of the work you're doing. Jane, I'll start with you just in terms of Labuto Library. 11 years is a long time. What have you seen as the changes in terms of adoption or use of technology?
I guess what the main thing that I've seen in terms of especially how the mEducation Alliance has adapted to those changes as well is a move toward understanding how important connection and inclusion is in terms of education and development. And of course, that's something that became very, very obvious to the world with the COVID pandemic. But the last Alliance meeting that was just before the COVID pandemic, the focus absolutely was on inclusion. And that was the last symposium at which we presented, talking about how important it is, how we were using educational technology and teaching coding to young girls in order to fight against early marriage in rural southern Zambia. It was intended to be the surprise that I think it is, that, what in the world does ed tech have to do with this? And I was just very gratified. A lot of people came to our session and understood that you really need to tackle issues like literacy and numeracy on many different levels if you really want to ensure inclusion, and you need to be able to reach young people who are out of school, for example, in countries where that's very much the case. And I was just very gratified that the Mark West, who was the moderator of our panel, said that message was his aha moment of the year. And So I do think that's a change, because I think people are realizing you can't just put technology, it's not pushing things out. It's a two-way street that it has to be.
Thanks, Jane. And it's interesting when you mention inclusion as well as disability or supporting learners with a disability, you know, has always been part of the symposia. And the last in-person event that we had in 2019 on digital literacy, it was standing room only, just in terms of the sessions. My former colleague from USAID, Josh Josha, and others, Benetech, our RTI, our RIT. So it's another part of the inclusion as well is very important. And we will be having a session on that, in fact, as part of the symposium as well. So thanks, Jane. Michael, what about, you know, that 11-year span? And then Bob, maybe the same question to you. Just any sort of observances of ed tech penetration in the field or use?
First of all, Tony, I just thought when you invited me for this exchange about the start of the mEducation Alliance Symposium and the networks and the people who met there, and in the beginning we were some visionaries, and now it became more and more a practitioners network. I thought I used the term nerd in the beginning, so there were a few nerds, and now we are all from the mainstream. And this is what we just recognize with the boost from COVID-19, if it comes to edtech. We started with a few pilot ideas or ideas to pilot ICT in education or the application of edtech. And now we have a huge portfolio. And as I said, digital by default becomes a commitment. Yeah? This is it's an amazing development of a network, and it still exists. If it comes to the edtech itself, I remember the first symposiums where we have these exhibition spaces and a lot of mobile devices and modifications of mobile devices were at the center of the tables. And after that, there was this hype about apps, and a lot of this was very much technical driven and from the technical experts driven. And only after that, we found out that we need more education expertise coming together with these technical experts and with these edtech nerds. And now the symposium covers all, the education perspective, the technical perspective, and even you just mentioned this exercise with our sun classes. Even in our wildest dreams, we were not prepared to figure out what artificial intelligence and augmented reality can do, even in the education sector. And some of these are weird ideas, some of them are frightening ideas, some of them will change the way we learn completely. And so yes, there will be at least an exciting space ahead of us, as we have had already in the past.
Thanks, Michael. That's excellent in terms.
Tony, if I can just jump in, just to build off of some of Michael's points. I think it's interesting that it's the mEducation Alliance. So we started off with a focus on mobile and mobile devices. And yet this past year at COVID, we did an effectiveness study on the response to remote and hybrid learning. And you could see that many countries, 80% had access to mobile devices. But the internet access divide with broader band access to resources was still very limited. So there really hasn't been much progress on connecting the unconnected with high-speed broadband, so this has kind of exposed a new access divide, which has been interesting. I think the other is, what Michael also talked about, is the focus on the educational outcomes, the pedagogy, the skills that are required, the kind of the why. Why are we investing in this? And how can technology help create environments that are unique from what you have in a classroom environment? How can it help create the skills that are increasingly in demand in a very fast changing world? And the final point I want to emphasize is that the lone wolf issue is that I think we see ecosystems now building. Even in our countries, we did a project with Turkey, and they were explicit about their project that they wanted to build out their national ecosystem of universities, of entrepreneurs, of solution providers, to bring them together with teachers to bring the best ideas to their students. So these are three really interesting aspects. But Tony, can I turn the table on you?
What? I guess, Bob, in the spirit of networking and partnership, go ahead.
So how about yourself? The 11 years, how have you seen kind of the mEducation Alliance evolve? And particularly this issue of this past year spinning out from USAID and kind of some of the ideas and challenges and opportunities that you see kind of with this new chapter for the Alliance.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Well, first of all, echoing some of the points that you've mentioned, thinking about how many projects were at the pilot stage without evidence or scale 10 or 11 years ago. And the maturation that has happened. Jane, you started with like Labuto Library, you had one, and now what number are you at with your Labuto Libraries?
We're not on every block yet by any means. 5 operations right now,
yeah.
But these are big things. These are not little things there.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking about, Bob, how many projects basically now have an evidence trail and are beyond just the proof of concept. In fact, the last few symposium, there were some organizations that approached us and were basically saying there's a distinction between sort of the proof of concept, those that are presenting, and we very much like those as well, because the Alliance is a great symposium or event for people to be able to share their new ideas, but also those that are established and are already sort of penetrating sort of beyond the proof of concept and going pilot into scale. So I'd say that's one of the big, it has been exciting to see more evidence. And I want to give like shout out to organizations like the EdTech Hub and others, the collaboration with the bank and the otherwise, that are investing in the evidence trail so that policymakers and those that are investing have more of a basis upon which to make data-driven decisions about. So again, a lot has happened in 11 years in that regard in terms of more evidence. It's interesting, Bob, when you mentioned the mEducation Alliance, starting with the M, I've often thought of, at the beginning, we wanted to emphasize, and we still do, the range of technologies. So the M was kind of the catch-all, but we've always emphasized radio, television, pico projectors. That's always been an important part of it. So in time, it just made me think of M as in many education, like many ways that you can attract. Michael, you're laughing. Did you want to jump in with something as well? Did you have a comment you wanted to make?
No, it's just I just like the approach of Bob to challenge you as well. I think there's nobody who can better assess the whole spectrum of mEducation Alliance activities since its existence. Do you have any favorite activity looking back to all these years? Something you has hosted, launched in the last years, which really chased you?
Yeah, that's great. And I'll pick up on Bob's theme, your question about the nonprofit as well. Yeah, I mean, I thought our 10th anniversary event that we did was just fun. I mean, you guys were all part of it as well. The whole thing's taped and on our website. We had the first annual awards ceremony. So something we'll be repeating, and we'll be making some announcements at this symposium. And it was just like a family gathering. We couldn't all be together because of COVID, but we still had over 100 participants, and we were just celebrating innovators working in the field. And we had our little red carpet welcoming people in terms of their comments as well for the event. I thought it underscored the informality, but the professionalism of the mEducation Alliance, that ultimately it's about, Jane had mentioned, partners and networks. Bob, I'd say one of the advantages of being a nonprofit or exclusively focused on this, because we very much benefited from a number of years of USAID support. And so a great appreciation for that. But being able to focus exclusively on building the Alliance, since we've been a nonprofit or rolled out from USAID, and then we have a number of spectrum of other activities we've been doing, including our Literacy League and Math Power communities. For example, Literacy League 20+ organizations that are all focused on literacy app development and what we might do together in terms of professional development. And then we did our first virtual math festival on Pi Day earlier this year, and the activities that we'll be doing and announcing about Math Power Initiative. So I'd say those are those are some pretty exciting activities that, again, having the bandwidth and having staff to be able to expand, including our technical services for members of the Alliance as well. So. Jane, you have a question?
Well, no, I was going to ask you about the Literacy League and Math Power. That I guess we'll be learning a lot more about it anyway in the other days, unless there's anything more you wanted to say about it now. But I did want to bring up one other thing about just the use of educational technology, because, you know, in development programs are always talking about sustainability, and technology by its very nature is not sustainable. I think we all know that. Any particular technology, and as libraries, but as, you know, like many other institutions, one goes into using a particular technology knowing it's just going to be for a particular time. Then we go on to the next technology or the next technology that comes down the pike that would better suit the needs of users. And so I guess again, I think the value of the mEducation Alliance is that it brings together practitioners who are in sustained and sustainable institutions who can help give feedback on new technologies that can be tried out in these institutions. I guess I just want to say we entered mEducation as just before we got our first grant, the All Children Reading Grand Challenge grant, the round 1 grant for our Lubuto literacy lessons that we created in order to teach children to read in the 7 Zambian languages. We are now in about the 8th year of a no-cost extension of that grant. And we are here year after year because we represent an institution that's grounded in the country, grounded in the society, and is sustained with sustainable interest. These lessons have been used by 7,000 or 8,000 children in our libraries, but we are still moving forward in partnership with World Vision to make them accessible around the country. So it took us that long. It didn't fit into the 2 years that it was intended, but because we were able to all learn, I think from the part of the grantor and the grantee, we were all able to learn what kind of input is really needed to make a product like this exactly meet the need and evolve even through the years it was being created to better meet the needs. So just want to say.
Thanks, Jane. And I would say one of the important underpinnings of the mEducation Alliance is to share those experiences with other communities. We've done over 30 e-news. We have this quarterly publication called EdTech Connected. We've just launched our new media channel called Pulse to be able to interview policymakers and practitioners. So Jane, I would say even the lessons that you've just shared right now, we're always looking for story ideas that we could disseminate back to our network. Again, one of the important parts of the mEducation Alliance, which is facilitating communication. Well, I know we're right before networking, and so I want to do a closeout question to you guys. I have 2 questions, one lightning round, or we'll do 2 lightning rounds. First of which is, what would you like to see the Alliance do in the next 2 years, let's say? Is there something specific that you can think of that maybe we're not doing already that you think the Alliance is well suited to do? So I'll start with Michael.
Well, Tony, as we just said, I mean, if we would have thought of in 2000, let's say 15, about the developments in EdTech, and somebody would have mentioned, we have to consider artificial intelligence and the use of artificial intelligence in education programs. You would say, Michael, have you been at the fresh air for the last 2 days? Now, and what I was trying to say is, in the past, we invented this stone soup. You remember our stone soup sessions? Yeah, when we sat together and thrown in the ideas from the different organization and different angles and perspectives. And out of these ideas, we picked out one by one a dish. Yeah, and let us continue to steer this stone soup bringing together the needs, but also the supports from the network, and to continuously figure out new activities and needs. And I like what we said in the beginning, that you are a beneficiary on one side, but a contributor on the other side. And this is what makes the Alliance, for me, even still rather non-formal, one of the most beneficiary, helpful network I'm involved in. So my answer would be continue with the stone soup.
Love it. Okay, that sounds good. Bob, Jane? Thanks, Michael.
I'll jump in. No, I think that you have a unique opportunity as the network grows, as we mentioned, going from 7 to 43, that I think a role of the Alliance is to play more actively this matchmaking role. So as you see activities, ideas, new interventions come through the member organizations, to be active in connecting them. Because I think at 43, it's difficult to know what everybody's doing individually as a member, but you as the hub will be able to kind of make those connections. I think there's a huge opportunity to be able to kind of play that matchmaking role going forward. So.
Thanks, Bob. And finally, Jane, any sort of reflections for your joining the 12th, 13th, and 14th Alliance, and what do you see in 3 years from now?
I sort of agree with what Mike said, sort of keeping it open, keeping it fluid, sort of back and forth. But I view the Alliance and these symposia in particular as kind of a marketplace that I always look forward to going back to this is my time to update. And so I think that updating and that professional development around all sides is just a really important thing to have as your focus, to know that we do not want that baby thrown out with the bathwater in any time.
Great. Well, thanks. Well, I want to thank you, Jane, and Mike and Bob, just in terms of the conversation about value. And again, it's comprised of the members of the Alliance and the organizations, Jane, that you're working with as well. So we're going to flip over now just to the networking session, and for folks to continue, this is always a very important part. We'll see how this works as a virtual event, for people to make new acquaintances. And we know from 11 years of hosting the symposium how much matchmaking has been done for people to be able to accelerate their activities. So again, I want to thank Bob, Mike, and Jane for joining me today just for this informal conversation about the Alliance, and look forward to seeing you guys in the networking session and in the sessions that follow over the next few days. In our chat, we've put the link for the networking. I'll see you guys there in just a moment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.